Hello everyone, it's Gigabeef here, and today we're looking at Tarkov's latest 5.56 weapon, the Aug. This new weapon might fill the role originally expected to by the G36, handling fairly well in CQB for a cheap price with a slightly increased fire rate over the MDR, SCAR and AK101 with 715 RPM. It comes out of the box with decent vertical recoil already, although the horizontal is noticeably tougher than some of the alternatives. There are two versions that are distinct weapons in Tarkov, the A1 and the A3, with the A1 purchasable on Peacekeeper 2 and a barter on Mechanic 2. The A3 version is on Peacekeeper 3, but both variants are usually cheaper on the flea market, with the A1 being naturally cheaper due to its worse stats. Now, not gonna lie, the A1 version of the Aug feels pretty bad. With no rails or anything, you're stuck to the tiny 1.5x optic and the horrible iron sight on top. Fortunately for us, there are things that we can do to make this one worthwhile. The A3 Aug is a bit better, with a small rail for lasers, but still the horrible 1.5x scope, but at least you can put a small dot on the top if you wanted to. The default configuration for the Aug A1 starts with 62 ergonomics and 63 recoil, versus the A3's 68 ergo and 61 recoil. If we take off all the parts and look at the fundamental lower piece, this is a fairer comparison given that all the mods are interchangeable between the two weapons, and as such the A1 has 79 ergo and 72 recoil to start with versus 84 ergo and 70 recoil on the A3, which is 5 more ergo and 2 less recoil. So possibly the most important aspect about modding here is the ability to swap parts between the two versions of the weapon. If you have Peacekeeper 3, you can really cheaply change an A1 Aug into something sensible through buying the A3 upper and either the low or high sight mount depending on your preference. After this, you can sell back the A1 upper for 3,500 rubles, so it costs about 5k total to do the conversion. Without the levels in Peacekeeper, you're basically stuck with the standard Aug 1.5x scope on either one, so I don't recommend trying this weapon out super early. For the cheapest usable build, grab an A1 from the fleet at whatever it costs, mine was 40k. Then we can do the conversion into the low mount and put the grip back on. Then you can literally just add a suppressor. The T4 Aug only fits to the Aug, so it's usually pretty cheap on the market. It sells back to Mechanic for 24k, so they can't really get below this, but from here you can add whatever optic and laser flashlight you want and call it a day. The other way you can go, which I personally prefer, is the Ratworks muzzle adapter. This is Mechanic 2 and lets you attach the regular 5.56 muzzles onto the Aug. In a similar vein to the SCAR, I like using the mini monster again attached to an SF3P muzzle because the Aug struggles with ergo a little bit, which is quite surprising given it's a bullpup. The mini can be accessed both on the flea market directly and from Skier 2 for a VHS tape barter, and only lowers ergo by 7, resulting in 55 ergo and 57 recoil, which is pretty good. Switching over to the A3 and building exactly the same weapon, this gets to 61 ergonomics and 55 recoil instead. You might feel that this is worth the extra cost, as the difference is basically the A3 minus the A1 plus the 5k to mod it. If the A1 is 40k for example and the A3 is 55k, 6 ergo and 2 recoil is probably worth 10k honestly, so go and grab the A3 instead. Technically speaking, the lowest recoil version of the Aug is the A3 with the Silencer Co. Seika ASR suppressor and brake combo, which comes to 45 ergonomics and 50 recoil. In typical bullpup fashion, because the recoil is already so low on the Aug to start with, you can't really make it much lower due to how the percentage recoil reduction of attachments works. A quick note about barrels, there is little point swapping to either of the shorter 16-inch versions, and they are practically identical between the A1 and A3 styles, despite the A1 being quite a bit cheaper. Overall, you only gain 4 ergonomics and lose 1 recoil point in fact, but critically this costs about 30k from Peacekeeper. After selling back the 20-inch barrel for 15k to Mechanic, it's still not worthwhile in my opinion. As standard, both the A1 and the A3 weapons come with the 20-inch barrel, so there's no trick here to get the shorter one. One final thing to mention before we move on to some practical testing, at the cost of 4 ergo and about 9k, you can get a 42 round mag for the Aug. These high capacity magazines are becoming more usable over time, with the addition of the new Banshee rig for example, which has 2 3x1 slots. It might be worth using one in the gun if you pair it with a compatible loadout. For reference, the cheapest is typically a CSA rig with any regular armour. So as usual, practically speaking, how do these ergonomics and recoil parameters actually feel? On ADS speed specifically, the regular cheap Aug is 19 frames of ADS speed versus the mini monster style A3 which is 15, and compared to our SCAR builds that we looked at the other day and the MDR which I'll show here. The Aug is cheap, so it should perform slightly worse than these other weapons really, but with a bit of love from the monster we can get it very close to the MDR and around the same performance as the SCAR, which I think is admirable. On vertical recoil, the Aug outperforms a short-barreled SCAR build at 70 recoil and is practically the same as an MDR with 64 recoil due to the Aug's fairly low 55 vertical. We have to remember that the stats on different weapons are not comparable directly, but this performance is very strong given the slightly higher fire rate present on the AUG as well. However, the big downside to this gun is the horizontal recoil. You can see the difference between the AUG and the MDR, and the SCAR is even tighter than both of these. In many ways it reminds me of the MCX a bit, which feels similar, good vertical recoil but a bit wild out to the sides, which makes it hard to full auto over medium and long range distances. You can even see this when firing on semi, as the likelihood of the weapon bouncing strongly to one side or the other makes tracking moving targets much harder than the other guns where this effect is not as strong. With that, let's jump into a raid to see how it felt. To mark the fuel tankers. We're here. This is probably not the best place to spawn of all time, but we'll try and get into the food court first. The food bit. See anybody up here? Don't really want to get caught out in the open. I can help it. Not ideal. Probably make it work. Install this guy. Right. Oh. Oh. That's scav or not? I'm not even sure. We win through strategy and not through skill. Throw a grenade would be quite useful. Oh no! Yikes! I didn't see him though. I nearly messed it up completely. Oh crap. No, 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 no. I need to heal this. Eee. Oh god. Get the Propital out. Right, bit of reload on. AUG's not bad, eh? It could be worse. Yeah, it's relatively high horizontal. That's kind of the main problem. Let's heal that stomach up next. Yeah, it is really high, left to right. So we need to fix this before this causes any more issues. Okay, we're healed. We'll loot this man in a second. I think it's this one, isn't it? Yeah. That's some random scav. That's a random scav. Iskra useful. What? Just madness. Oh. Oh my word. Who is that? Is that a scav? They spawn literally there next to me? What the hell? mean, this tactic is interesting, but very busted. But our armor's also pretty busted. Literally looted the man. Utterly looted. Yes, what was this deal? It's a real player. I'm not even sure how they got here. That's random. But okay. Alright, we just kind of need to leave. Does this thing have the flashlight on it still? It does. Let's turn that off before it gets us killed. One thing I'm running a risk on here, actually. I want to get rid of this. We need to put that in there. Because otherwise we're running the risk of not having enough painkiller and then dying. Oh god. That's a lot of horizontal. That is a lot of horizontal recoil, my friends. I wonder if it's late enough to go through here. I always get tempted to go through the water bit, but I often just get shot by people. Let's not do it. If someone's in there, they'll hear me. Let's go this way. It's way better. Well, that doesn't bode well, does it? So does this work or does it not work? People saying you just have to wait. Okay. Wait, what? What happened? That is so random. Scouts with PMC? I guess. I didn't check the one at the top. He was the first guy. And then, oh my god. Chad live! Guys, we made it. We're a Chad now. Look at this. We're leveling up purely based off PvP. And we killed the high level dude. Look at that. So next, go and check out my video on the SCAR, as this includes the MDR comparisons and is useful for comparing the options in 5.56 in the mid game, which is very, very strong due to the M856A1 ammo. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons. Hit all the buttons if you enjoyed the video, and as always, have fun in your raids.